A genius shooter, after just a few years of practice, defeats professional players and becomes the shooting champion at the Athens Olympics. Due to his extraordinary talent and cute appearance, Yanju becomes famous overnight. But then, a strange tragedy occurs. All of Jangjae's family members are brutally murdered in a single night. When the police investigate, they find the murder weapon, a pistol, the same one Jangjae used during the Olympics. The biggest shock is that the pistol only has Jangjae's fingerprints on it, and it is stained with his family's blood. Suddenly, the police find another clue. A week before the murder, Jangjae had a big fight with his father over something. Because of this, Yanju becomes the prime suspect and is immediately arrested. During the first trial, Yanju is sentenced to death. However, after an appeal, the punishment is changed to life imprisonment. Finally, due to a lack of evidence, he is declared innocent. But in the eyes of the world, he is still a murderer. People mock him, point fingers at him, and spread rumors about him. Overwhelmed by the shame and guilt, Yanju decides to commit suicide. As he is about to jump off a bridge, memories of his family flood his mind. He feels that perhaps his journey shouldn't end here. He decides to find the real killer and avenge his family's death. For the next 10 years, he works day and night and builds an e-commerce empire, which quickly grows into an $800 billion business. Now, Yanju is no longer just a common man, but a super rich businessman. But then, one night, during a dark and stormy weather, a black-clothed assassin suddenly appears in front of him. The assassin brutally attacks Yanju and kills him. This tragic story seems like a twist from a screenwriter's imagination, but it is actually taken from a famous webcomic, W. This webcomic was so popular that it sold millions of copies, and all the readers eagerly waited for the next chapter. Everyone wanted Yanju to reach the real killer, but the author ended the story without any reason. The most shocking part, on the very night the comic's author finished Jangjae's death scene, he himself disappeared. And the strange thing was that his assistants were sitting outside his room, but no one heard any sound from inside. The author's daughter, Yanju, was a chest surgeon. Her boss was also a big fan of the webcomic and asked Yanju for a spoiler of the next chapter. Yanju reluctantly agreed. When she goes to her father's studio, she gets another shock. Her father is missing. As she is looking at the panel of Jangjae's bloodied body, a blood-stained hand emerges from the screen and pulls her inside. When Yanju regains consciousness, she finds herself in the webcomics universe. She realizes that this world resembles her father's story. Then her gaze falls downward, where a man lies covered in blood, Jangjae. Yanju immediately shouts for help, grabs a towel to bandage Jangjae's wounds, and a waiter calls the police. But within just 2 minutes, Jangjae starts having breathing problems. Yanju understands that this is a case of pneumothorax, and if not treated immediately, Jangjae will die. She had never performed open chest surgery before, but without hesitation, she takes a steel pen from the waiter and plunges it into Jangjae's chest to help him breathe again. The emergency response team arrives and takes him to the hospital. When the hotel manager hears that the injured man is Jangjae, he is shocked and immediately rushes to see him. Yanju is confused. Jangjae was just a comic character, so what is happening? Then a line appears in the air, "To be continued." And at that moment, Yanju returns to reality. But the twist doesn't end here. Yanju's father is missing, but the comic continues to update. And in the new updates, a new character is introduced, Yanju. Everything she did in the comic world was being updated in real time for the readers. Now, the comic and the real world are connected. Jangjae also starts searching for Yanju because he has an intuition that this girl might be the key to changing his life. Another shocking thing is that everything in the comic starts being revealed from Jangjae's perspective, as if the story is progressing according to his thoughts. This becomes an unsolved mystery for both the assistant and Yanju. Then, her father suddenly returns. But when the assistants ask him where he was, he refuses to say anything. Another strange thing happens. The author realizes that the comic's characters are no longer under his control. Earlier, he wanted to kill Jangjae, but Yanju saved him. The author panics and writes another death scene where Jangjae is killed via injection. When Yanju learns about this from the assistant, she immediately returns to the comic world. There, she reaches the VIP ward and sees that the nurse is still injecting poison. She quickly snatches the syringe, and this causes the comics panel to change in reality. Now, Yanju is trapped in a mystery. Was her father really writing the story from another world? Was Jangjae a comic character or a real person? When Jangjae is discharged from the hospital, he arrives in a red sports car and takes Yanju out for dinner. Then Yanju conducts an experiment. When To Be Continued appears, she hides in the trial room and suddenly returns to reality. But the most shocking thing, only 30 minutes had passed in the real world, while 2 months had passed in the comic world. When new episodes are released, the fans get very excited because the tone of the story suddenly becomes romantic. A serious thriller full of suspense and danger had now shifted into a weird romance, showing the bonding between Jangjae and Yanju. Fans crazily support this unexpected couple and enjoy the new romance, calling it a no-logic love story. But the editors and assistants are confused. The studio was still writing new episodes, so where did the already published chapters come from? Hearing this, the writer becomes furious and orders the editorial team to take back the new episodes and temporarily shuts down the studio. He moves to a hotel where he can write the story alone because he feels that the story is slipping out of his control. This is my creation. I am the god of this story. If my characters are going out of my control, I will end them. The writer decides that Jiangjae must die, so he writes a car accident scene for him. But just as Jiangjae is about to get into the accident, the entire comic world freezes. Everything stops, and when Jiangjae somehow escapes the accident, the world returns to normal. This incident makes him feel that someone is manipulating his destiny. At this moment, the writer's screen also starts changing, as if everything he writes is being influenced in real time. Jiangjae starts wondering why he keeps coming close to death. Now, both the writer and Jiangjae are searching for an answer to the same question. Who is deciding my story and my life and death? In reality, the writer's personal life is connected to Jiangjae's story. When he gets divorced, he writes Jiangjae's suicide scene, the one where he jumps off the bridge. At that time, the writer was depressed and thought the story would end there. But when the writer wakes up the next morning, he sees that Jiangjae is still alive. He had held onto the railing and hung there all night. The writer thinks he might have forgotten due to intoxication, but this scene motivates him to try living again. The writer decides to transform Jiangjae's life. He writes an arc where Jiangjae becomes a billionaire businessman who buys a TV channel and starts a massive crime investigation show. Parallelly, the writer's own life also becomes successful. The webcomic becomes a super hit, he earns money and fame, and he becomes a top creator again. But then something strange happens. Jiangjae often starts acting on his own will in the story. He does things that the writer never wrote. An invisible force was taking the story in a different direction. Jiangjae also starts to understand this. Until now, he thought he was the hero of his story, but perhaps someone else is controlling his decisions. And the most shocking thing, Yanju's sudden appearance in the story. When Jiangjae learns about Yanju's existence, he takes her to his luxury penthouse in the hotel. But that night, a black-clothed assassin appears and points a gun at Jiangjae. Jiangjae immediately pushes Yanju aside and fights the attacker. But as the attacker enters the elevator, he suddenly disappears. On the other hand, the writer is losing control. In frustration, he smashes his drawing tablet and becomes completely frustrated that Jiangjae keeps escaping the death scenes he writes. When Yanju regains consciousness 2 days later, she sees that she is wearing a strange, revealing nightdress and suspects that Jiangjae might have some weird obsession. But she decides that she needs to return to the real world, so she plans to find the to be continued sign. Jiangjae becomes suspicious of where Yanju came from. When he questions her, Yanju, without thinking, kisses him because the first time she kissed Jiangjae, she returned to the real world. But this time, nothing happens. Jiangjae becomes even more confused and threatens to shoot her. He breaks a mirror, which alerts the guards and assistants to come inside. Jiangjae finally shoots at Yanju, but the bullet passes through her body and only breaks a mirror. Yanju collapses in shock. After this incident, Jiangjae officially takes Yanju into his custody. Now Yanju is locked in the hotel because the police and media are searching for her. Jiangju is still confused. What is Yanju? Did she come from another dimension? Can she never die? Jiangjae starts to understand some weird things. The CCTV footage of the truck accident is missing. The nurse doesn't remember why she gave the poison injection. Jiangjae's old attacker calls him and asks him to meet on the rooftop. Jiangjae officially starts doubting that his real enemy might not even be from this world. On the other hand, a case is registered against Yanju, and the secretary starts working against her. The secretary takes her to a rooftop bar and removes the guards so that the police can arrest Yanju. The police finally arrest Yanju. She is considered a suspect in Jiangjae's case. By the time Jiangjae sends his bodyguards, it's already too late. Jiangjae now realizes that the police and the entire world are against him. Jiangjae immediately fires his secretary and goes directly to jail to meet Yanju. Jiangjae finally says to Yanju, "Tell me the truth. Who are you?" And Yanju is finally ready to confess that she is a webcomic character who exists in a fictional world. As soon as she tells the truth, the to be continued sign appears, and Yanju suddenly disappears into thin air. Jiangjae is shocked as he watches Yanju disappear before his eyes. The police and people are also stunned by this miracle, but no one can believe that this is real. But now, a new problem arises. If Yanju returns to this world, she will either be shot or imprisoned for life. Neither outcome is good. On the other hand, the writer's assistant makes a drastic decision without the writer's permission. He erases the to be continued sign and tries to forcefully end the webcomic. But at that moment, the entire comic screen goes blank. Jiangjae starts feeling a strange sensation inside him. When a character starts to understand their reality, a powerful realization is activated. The moment Jiangjae fully understands that he is part of a fictional world, the entire webcomic world's time freezes. The entire environment becomes static. Everything looks like a still comic panel, as if frozen in a photograph, and only Jiangjae remains as a moving character. A digital screen appears in front of him, showing his reflection. At that moment, he has a flashback. When he was about to die, he pulled Yanju into his world from within within this screen. If I can bring someone into this world, can I leave this world myself? And with this realization, Yanju enters the real world. Now, Yanju exists in the real world. His pictures are everywhere on posters and billboards, and his face is seen as a well-known anime manga icon, a fictional character who has now entered the real world. He goes to a bookstore where he sees his own comic books on the shelves. In a way, he is now watching his own story from a third-person perspective. A strange, bitter smile appears on his face. In the entire real world, there are only two types of people for him: those who blindly love him, those who are jealous of his success and hate him. Now he finally reaches Wu Yanju's hospital, where her colleagues tell her that a man wants to meet her. At first, Yanju casually ignores it, but when she sees that the man is none other than Jiangje, she is shocked. Jiangje finally reaches the webcomic creator's studio, where he gets proof that his entire existence is fiction. His sports car, his penthouse, his face and hairstyle, everything was designed from the writer's sketches. And then he has another shocking realization. Yanju, who kept saving his life, is the daughter of the very writer who created his character. After understanding this, Jiangje feels a strange sensation inside him. Was his entire life just a written script? Were his struggles just to entertain the fans? And then the writer finally appears in front of Jiangji. The writer is completely shocked when he sees his own written character standing alive in front of him. His mind goes blank, but then he picks up a blade and tries to attack Jiangji. But Jiangji is no longer a fictional character. He is now a real person. He easily blocks the writer's attack and throws him onto a chair. The writer's head hits a corner and blood starts flowing. Jiangji angrily asks the writer, "Why did you create me? Why did you write my story? Why did you give me pain?" But the writer remains silent. Jiangji finally asks the writer for the name of his family's killer. He still needs confirmation for his revenge, but the writer tells him the truth: there is no killer. His entire backstory was just a plot device. His family was never supposed to die. It was just a dramatic plot point the writer created to entertain the readers. Jiangji is completely shattered. For him, the biggest story of his life, his biggest goal, was just a scripted fiction. Was the loss of his entire family meaningless? He tries to suppress his anger, but when he hears a sarcastic remark from the writer, he loses his mind. Jiangji takes out his gun and points it at the writer's head, and finally, he pulls the trigger. The writer is injured, but Jiangji didn't intend to kill him. He immediately tells the assistant to call for an emergency and leaves the scene. The writer is admitted to Yanju's hospital, and meanwhile, the editors go through a new shocking twist. A new comic chapter has been automatically updated, and the end of the comic shockingly matches the real-world events. The final chapter of the comic shows Jiangji killing his creator and then jumping off a bridge to commit suicide. When Yanju reaches the bridge, Jiangji's body is already missing. Along with that, the bullet inside the writer's body has also disappeared. And on the last page, only one line is written: a hero who fought to find the truth, but in the end, he was nothing more than a story. Jiangji's suicide scene causes an uproar in both the manga world and reality. The manga publishing company receives thousands of complaints and calls, and fans start a petition demanding Jiangji's return. Wu Yanju tries to convince herself that this is just a story, a fiction, and she shouldn't get emotionally involved, but she herself closely follows Jiangji's disappearance. Then, shocking news arrives. A drowned body is found in the Han River. Wu Yanju is scared, but when it is confirmed that it's not Jiangji, she feels a bit relieved. Jiangji might have returned to his manga world. Yanju consoles herself. On the other hand, the writer is also struggling internally. Jiangji had spared his life, and the writer is thinking about bringing him back, but the writer can't edit the manga because Jiangji's farewell letter was written for a real-world person. Because of this, the manga officially ends. 2 months later, Wu Yanju's professor sends her to an arranged marriage meeting. Her blind date is a strange man who looks like a cartoon character. Yanju makes an excuse and goes to the washroom, where she complains to her colleagues. Then, her phone signal cuts off, and water suddenly starts gushing in. A mysterious force pulls her into the Han River. As Yanju falls into the water, she sees Jiangji. Jiangji is in a frozen state, completely motionless, as if time has stopped for him. Then, Yanju returns to reality and checks the last page of the manga. She is shocked when the manga's "The End" suddenly changes to be continued. Yanju immediately calls the assistant and requests to revive Jiangji, but the assistant tells her that he can't bring Jiangji back because he is not the creator. And here, another shocking truth is revealed. Jiangji's real creator is not the writer, but Yanju herself. Little Yanju had once seen a talented shooter at the Olympics and, inspired by him, created a character, Jiangji. She had first designed Jiangji in her notebook, and that concept later became the main protagonist of the manga. Yanju now understands why Jiangji was so connected to her. He was her first and favorite character. Now there was only one way to save Jiangji. Yanju had to edit the manga herself. She writes and draws until her hand is injured, changes the panel of Jiangji's suicide, and finally sends a rescue team into the manga world to save Jiangji. And finally, Jiangji's time starts moving again. The water rescue team pulls Jiangji out of the manga world and he survives. But Yanju falls back into the manga world. Jiangje now understands that his life cannot depend on someone else's writing. When the police are shifting Wu Yanju from one jail to another, Jiangje stops the police car in front of them. He wants to know the truth from Yanju. How was he actually revived? But Yanju teases him and doesn't answer. In her opinion, Jiangje's life was no longer part of a manga, but the start of a new romance. Jiangje is a bit confused, but he also feels a strange happiness. But another realization hits him. Until now, the writer tried to kill him, and now his own daughter is reviving him. Now Yanju can't stay in jail, and the police have found a lot of evidence against her. So Jiangje comes up with a crazy idea. They should fake a marriage. Jiangje and Yanju officially register their marriage in a foreign country, and because of this, the police consider them husband and wife. Now, all the suspicious moments, like Yanju appearing on the rooftop or running from the police, have a logical explanation. They were secretly married. Yanju is officially released from jail, and Jiangje puts a marriage ring on her finger. Now, the daughter of a manga writer has officially become the wife of the manga's male lead. Jiangje finally starts enjoying romance in his new life, but then he receives a call from an unknown number, and on the phone, only one message appears. How can you be alive? Jiangje had believed that his family's real killer didn't exist, but now this is proven wrong. The real killer is still alive. Jiangje analyzes that the killer was a character created in the manga world just to move the story forward. He had no face or identity. He could appear from any angle in any situation, like a shadow killer. And then Jiangze has a horrifying realization. If the killer has no fixed form, he can exist in reality too. The killer appears in front of Yanju and shoots her, but at that moment, Yanju suddenly returns to the manga world. This killer has become an interdimensional being, someone who can freely travel between reality and the manga world. Jiangje starts noticing another shocking thing. Yanju's body is becoming transparent. If a manga character's purpose of existence ends, they start disappearing from the manga world. And because of Jiangje's relationship with Yanju, his old secretary is starting to disappear. Jiangje now has a clear goal. He will find the real killer, whether he has to go to reality or return to the manga world. Jiangje quickly reaches his old secretary's house, but no one answers from inside. Yanju understands that the secretary's existence was a result of the assistant's imagination, a manga fanboy who wanted to keep his ideal female character in a perfect supportive role. Jiangje tries a password, and Yanju, without thinking, enters the assistant's phone number, which matches the last 4 digits of the lock code. The door immediately unlocks, but what happens inside is unexpected. The secretary has an emotional breakdown upon seeing Jiangje. Her hands and legs start slowly disappearing because her character was only written as Jiangje's support system. If Jiangje's focus shifted to Yanju, the secretary's existence logically ended. Jiangje hugs her and convinces her that she is still important. As soon as he reaffirms her importance, her body gradually returns to normal. Yanju has another shocking realization here. Manga world characters fade away when their purpose ends. If Jiangje and Yanju's love is officially established, the secretary could disappear forever. Jiangje now makes a final decision. If the balance between the manga world and reality is to be restored, the manga must be completely reset. Jiangje asks Yanju to return to the real world and rewrite the manga, but this time, he decides to delete all his memories. He wants to erase all the conversations, feelings, and memories he shared with Yanju so that the balance can be restored. Jiangje gives Yanju a USB drive containing his final message, instructions for the writer on how to write a logical ending for the manga. After that, Jiangje takes a final leap. He jumps off a building, and the manga world resets. After Jiangje's memory is wiped, a new draft of the manga is written. The writer finally assigns a proper face and identity to the killer. This character is an old colleague of Jiangje's father who suffers from paranoid schizophrenia. He was jealous of Jiangje's father, so he planned to eliminate the entire family. The manga ends as an investigative crime thriller where Jiangje exposes the killer, sends him to jail, and then establishes himself in politics and business. The manga becomes a purely logical detective story with a hint of romance between Jiangje and his childhood friend, the secretary. But this final plan creates another problem. In the manga world, the killer was a faceless plot device used only to move the story forward. But when he was given a proper identity and face, he developed an independent consciousness. The killer realizes that he was created only as a stepping stone to make Jiangje stronger. Now he understands that the writer and Jiangje are going to permanently erase him. This realization fills him with rage and betrayal. Was I created just as a disposable villain? No logic, no choice, just a death sentence? But even after killing the writer, the killer doesn't disappear. Why? Because he has now become a true independent entity. He has gained the power to break the boundaries between the manga world's fiction and reality. And the most shocking thing, his face resembles Jiangje's. I am not just a villain, the killer finally says, looking at the camera. I am the new protagonist of this story. And at that moment, the screen goes goes completely black. Reality and the manga world have now mixed. Yanju now stands on a new battlefield where fiction and reality have no meaning. A new page begins in front of him, but this time, the writer is someone else. And the most shocking thing? In the new manga panel, Yanju is depicted as a villain. The confusion of time and space has completely broken Wu Yanju's mind. She has lost her loved ones and has become emotionally unstable. In this state, performing surgery on any patient would mean sending them to their death. After leaving the manga world, no one remembers Jiangjae's existence. His name, his face, his memories, everything has been deleted. Not a single photo remains as a memento. Yanju, in frustration, buys manga copies, cuts out all the panels, and sticks them on a board, spending her days in depression just looking at them. For the world, Yanju is still the popular hero, smart, handsome, and fearless. He has found a new clue about his parents' killer, and his face is displayed on TV broadcasts. But an unknown force is manipulating everything. Jiangjae's consciousness has been reset, and he has no idea about Yanju or the alternate dimension. And then, another major incident occurs. A violent shooting attack takes place at a TV station. Yanju is summoned back into the manga world. As Yanju falls into the manga world, she is sent to a hospital in the middle of an emergency. Doctors and nurses are performing life-saving surgeries, and the hospital has become a battlefield. Then Jiangjae appears in front of her, grabs her hand, and pulls her toward an injured patient who is screaming from a bullet wound. Yanju is frozen in shock as she stares at his face. Jiangjae scolds her angrily, telling her to work instead of standing around like a fool. A doctor notices that Yanju doesn't belong to this hospital and starts questioning her. Yanju quickly escapes, steals a nurse's coat, and goes to the hospital rooftop. At the same time, Jiangji also arrives on the rooftop. He is wondering why the killer has become active again and why new murders are happening. Jiangja notices that Yanju keeps looking at him. He is about to directly ask her who she is, but then the secretary calls him urgently. Jiangja leaves the rooftop, and Yanju gets stuck in the manga world for almost a week. By now, Yanju has no money, no identity, no home. She survives by stealing leftover food from the hospital and cafeteria, and sometimes sneaking milk or butter from people's fridges. Finally, she is forced to break into the secretary's house. Her plan is simple: make some ramen, take a quick shower, steal some money, and leave. But Jiangja also suddenly arrives at the secretary's house. As soon as he sees the kettle boiling, he suspects someone is inside. He breaks down the door and catches Yanju red-handed. This scene becomes ultra awkward. Yanju tries to hide out of guilt and embarrassment, but Jiangju is clearly glaring at her. But the most shocking moment comes when Jiangja notices that Yanju's lips are chapped, and without saying a word, he takes out an ointment and applies it to her lips with his own hands. Yanju becomes even more emotionally broken. In just one day, only 4 romantic moments had happened, but Jiangja had never said, "I love you." This one-sided love is breaking her even more. Jiangja initially plans to hand her over to the police, but at the last moment, he regrets it. He feels like he might be missing something important. Jiangja takes Yanju to the hospital to visit his injured uncle, but there another twist occurs. The uncle has received an audio recording from an unknown number. In this recording, Jiangjae's drunk voice is heard arguing with his parents, and then the sound of a gunshot is heard. The uncle is shocked. Until now, he had always protected Jiangjae, but after hearing this recording, his trust is shaken. Jiangjae tries to explain that this is a trap, but then a bullet comes from an unknown direction and hits the uncle's chest. Within just a few seconds, the uncle lets out a painful scream and dies on the spot. And then a gun automatically appears in Jiangjae's hand. The police see him. Now, the victim has become a murderer. Jiangjae can't explain, and he runs from the police. An officer shoots at him, hitting his shoulder. Yanju quickly puts him in a car and escapes, hiding in a private hotel. Jiangjae has now become a hunted man. Earlier, people considered him a hero, but now he is a wanted criminal whom no one believes. The manga world is completely under the killer's control. At this moment, Jiangjae's body parts start slowly disappearing. He realizes that he is a story character, and if his story becomes redundant, he will automatically be erased. At the same time, the manga villain makes a terrifying move. He extends his hand from the screen and tries to kill Yanju in reality. Yanju turns off the screen's power to prevent the villain from attacking her further. But this is an impossible choice. If she turns the manga board on, the villain will interfere in reality, and if she keeps it off, there will be no way to save Jiangjae. And then, with a new twist, Yanju is summoned back into the manga world, and now she is in a new location where people are searching for Jiangjae and a fresh murder conspiracy is underway. Everywhere, hate messages against him are circulating. People consider him an escaped killer, and public perception is against him. Time fast forwards, and a month passes. Yanju goes to the hotel where Jiangjae was hiding, but no one is there. The hotel's entire record has been deleted, and there is no proof of Jiangji's presence. Then, a rumor spreads that Jiangjae has died while running from the police. Yanju is shocked and in pain, fearing that this might be true. She contacts her old bodyguard, who secretly reveals Jiangjae's location, but only on the condition that she convinces Jiangjae to surrender to the police. But as Yanju waits at the bus stop, Jiangjae suddenly appears in front of her, completely alive and perfectly fine. fine. His expression is blank, and Yanju feels a strange confusion. Her emotions explode all at once, but she can't say a word. Jung-jae has now become accustomed to these supernatural events. Disappearing doors, magically appearing guns, and altered reality are no longer new to him. Now he has no money, his accounts are frozen, and he is officially a fugitive. But one thing is fixed in his mind. He wants to give Yanju a good life, so he takes her to buy new clothes, they get matching outfits from a roadside stall, share an ice cream, and then go grocery shopping at a superstore. Yanju becomes emotional. The small joys she couldn't enjoy with a normal person, she is now experiencing with a fugitive. But there is always a strange tension. Jung-jae's actions are romantic, but he doesn't feel a connection with her. And then a shocking discovery is made. Jung-jae has a manga book that Yanju accidentally brought from the real world to the manga world. This manga book exactly tells the story of what has happened to Jung-jae so far. The memory wipe, the world reset, and him becoming a fugitive. Jung-jae has read the entire manga and understands that there was also a romance angle in the story that he doesn't remember. If this story is true, then is Yanju the girl I loved? Jung-jae realizes that even though his memory has been erased, his heart still recognizes Yanju. Another burning question arises in his mind. How is all this happening? His conclusion is simple. I need to find out the truth. And then another supernatural door appears, connecting the manga world and reality. Jung-jae, without thinking, grabs Yanju's hand and both enter the real world. After entering the real world, Yanju's mind starts overloading again. On one side is the manga's story, on the other is reality, and the balance between them is collapsing. Jung-jae reaches Yanju's father's office, but his face has mutated into a horrific shape. His face looks like a blank canvas without eyes, nose, or mouth. Yanju panics and starts running away, but Jung-jae now wants to execute his final strategy. He knows that the killer's real address was written by the manga's assistant, referencing a real-world apartment, a simple, non-suspicious place, room 815. If Jung-jae can exist in both worlds, can he summon himself into the manga world? He sends Yanju a text message and asks her to connect the manga tablet. As soon as Yanju activates the tablet, another supernatural portal opens, and Jung-jae successfully summons himself into the manga world. He directly enters the killer's room, where the killer is shocked to see him. An intense hand-to-hand combat begins between Jung-jae and the killer. But now, the killer has become a normal person in reality. His supernatural abilities are gone, and a 50-year-old man can't win a fight against a young fighter. Within just a few minutes, Jung-jae defeats him and ties him to a chair. He immediately calls the police and reports that he has caught the real killer of the TV station shooting. And without any tension, he gets into the car Yanju drew and drives away. Now Jung-jae is officially a fugitive. The public still considers him a killer, and evidence is being fabricated against him. The killer had created a fake audio recording where Jung-jae shoots his family. Jung-jae is no longer the true hero of this story, but a tragic villain who is just a victim of a manipulated narrative. He has only one option left: to fake his death. Yanju draws a duplicate dead body, and Jung-jae's death is officially announced. With this, his identity starts being erased from the manga world, and for the public, Jung-jae is now just old news. But Jung-jae has one more secret mission. He wants to live a normal life with Yanju. He asks her to redraw his wedding ring so that the connection between him and Yanju is never broken. And now, another major experiment is about to happen. Can a real-world person permanently live in the manga world? But whatever is happening is not going exactly as planned. Jung-jae has won, but only temporarily. In the manga world, the killer has officially been caught, but suddenly he escapes from jail. And this time, he is not just attacking in the manga world, he is also killing in the real world. He kills police officers, steals their cars and guns, and goes straight to the manga writer's office. His next target is Yanju. He pulls Yanju into the manga world and smashes the writer's drawing tablet so that Jung-jae can't change the story again. Jung-jae is completely helpless. He can't find Yanju anywhere, and the manga writer's control has completely fallen into the killer's hands. Jung-jae goes directly to the politician's office, who is secretly being controlled by the killer. He forcefully interrogates him and gets the address of a warehouse, where the killer has imprisoned Yanju. But there's a big problem. Jung-jae's death has been officially announced, so if he doesn't exist in reality, where is he now? And then another supernatural moment occurs. A flashing text screen appears. To be continued. Jung-jae returns directly from the manga world to reality. When he sees the latest chapter of Manga W, his heart stops for a second. The killer has officially shot Yanju. Now, Jung-jae can only do one thing: face the killer and write a proper ending to this story. He maxes out his car's speed and crashes directly into the killer at full speed. Both are shooting at each other without any hesitation. Jung-jae is an expert shooter, Olympic champion level, and because of this, his aim is more accurate than the killer's. Within just a few shots, several bullets have entered the killer's body and he falls to the ground. But when Jung-jae reaches the warehouse, his worst fear comes true. Only Yanju's blood is there, but she herself is missing. As soon as the "to be continued" subtitle appears, Yanju is sent back to reality, but she is in a near-death state. She is taken to the hospital, and the doctors officially declare her brain dead. Jiangje completely breaks down. But there is one final hope. If Yanju is also a manga character, she can be revived in the manga world, and Jiangje was already prepared for this moment. He had already asked the writer to hide a secret copy of the drawing tablet, which still exists as a backup. Jiangje immediately goes to find the hidden tablet, but then another shocking twist occurs. A politician whom Jiangje had exposed secretly arrives at the crime scene and steals the tablet. He gets an idea of the tablet's magical power and secretly plans to destroy Jiangji's plan. Jiangje starts fighting against him but is injured, and now the final battle of this story officially begins. This tablet was an object of infinite power. Whatever was drawn on it would become real, and if Jiangje could draw Yanzu on it, she could be revived. Now, Jiangje has only one last fight. Either he takes back the tablet and revives Yanju, or this story will end forever. Jiangje is writing the end of his story in the real world, but his fate is still in the hands of the manga world. Yi Yuan is trying to take full advantage of political power, but Jiangje has complete evidence of all his illegal actions. A USB drive that he throws directly at Yi Yuan's face. Yi Yuan becomes furious, and without hesitation, shoots Jiangje. A bullet hits him directly in the chest, and he falls. Jiangje's blood flows on the road, and the world slowly starts to blur before his eyes. Yanju comes at full speed to save him, but as soon as she gets close, a huge truck suddenly comes between her and Jiangje, and after that, Jiangje completely disappears. Yanju is sent back to reality in shock, and the final page of the manga is officially published. Jiangji is dead, but the real twist of the story is yet to come. The manga didn't end in the real world. Someone else had secretly rewritten its last pages. That someone was none other than the writer, who had secretly written an alternate ending for Jiangje's story. The writer was about to sacrifice his life, but he had written one final piece of the manga that could give Jiangji a new chance. He destroyed Yi Yuan's entire illegal empire, leaking all his illegal records to the police and media. And the biggest twist was, Jiangje was still alive. But there was a huge consequence. The writer himself had become a character in the manga world, and in his place, Jiangje now existed in the real world. Yanju finally meets Jiangje in the real world, but the writer can't return. He had written a small letter for Jiangje. I have given you a chance in this world, so now this is your story. Write your own world. And in this way, a manga character officially became a real human. Jiangje spent 2 years in jail, paying for his past. All his fake accusations were cleared, and now he is officially a free man. After coming out of jail, he returns to Yanju in the real world. Now there is no manga world or alternate dimension, just a normal life. Yanju had kept a photo of the writer, which was proof of his ultimate sacrifice. Now, Jiangje and Yanju are just living like a normal couple, without any supernatural twists, without any extra story. Whatever happens in their life now will be part of a new chapter in a real world, where only the two of them are together. And with this, the drama ends.